Join the stars of the Ancient Aliens TV show, Eric Von Doniken, as he returns to Manchester after an amazing response to his last presentation. David Childress will guide you through the evidence left behind. Mike Barrow will take you to other worlds, where Nick Pope will present the real X-Files. Paula Harris will share incredible testimonies. It's time to believe and raise consciousness. Join like-minded souls on Saturday, June 23rd, 2018 for Awakening. What do you believe?
The UK and across the world online. You're now listening to The Kevin Moore Show. Now on today's show, I'm about to be joined with my guest, Patrick D. Haan. Now Patrick was born in Queens, New York and worked for 3 decades in commercial insurance, living along the way in Saudi Arabia, Belize and Colombia. Now in 2014, at the age of 50, he started to channel, and in 2014 he channeled the book The Alien Handbook. Patrick D. Haan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kevin.
Patrick, just gone off with a bit of bio there about your background and that you're channeling now. You've been channeling since you were 50. But you've always been a channeler though, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's something that happened in your childhood, would you say?
Yes. Looking back on the age of 6, 7, or 8 from adulthood, I can now say confidently that the way information arrives, particularly from my guardian angel guides or other entities around, was occurring then pretty much the way it happens now. The barrier or the obstacle or the challenge, pick your term, for the better part of 5 decades, 4 decades at least, was I didn't recognize it. I took it for granted. I simply assumed that the mind and information that comes into the mind works pretty much the same for most people. Given all the differences between humans, everyone has different abilities, different personalities. We all take that for granted and understand that. But the way information comes into the mind, I assumed, worked that way for most people. Just the way most of us don't even think about eating or breathing unless we're doctors or nurses and understand those body functions. I discovered pretty gradually and pretty abruptly that's not the case. That the information that comes to me is not universal or even typical. That it's actually pretty rare. And when I started to exercise the ability and explore it and hone it, similar to learning, for example, another language, all of us that can speak one language can learn another language. When I started to pursue that, it got much better, much sharper. Rather than just perceive information that was being given to me, when information seemed to decide on its own, I went proactive rather than reactive, and I asked questions. And I started recognizing the answers coming into my head, popping into my head. In other words, I began to sort information into my own self-generated and the incoming information. Then I discovered that I could make this mental connection, not just my guardian angels or guides, but all sorts of entities, energetic beings, particularly the souls of dead people, or animals that had passed away, or in many cases, all sorts of guardian angels and guides of many different people.
Okay, so and when when those voices come in, is that your own voice you hear?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a voice. When people say it's a voice, that seems to suggest speech. The information comes in much more quickly than speech, but at the same time, much more clearly. In other words, when I'm channeling, the information often comes in better than if I'm listening to a movie, someone else speak, an informational lecture, or anything like that. It's not a voice at all. It sometimes arrives on its own, but mostly arrives in response to a direct question or an inquiry that I make about a particular subject. And if the subject goes into some depth, for example, a channeling session, the questions and the answers flow back and forth in a way that's similar to a human conversation, but much more efficient. What slows it down is I have to write it down.
So at 50...
But my guides are very, very patient with me when I'm doing that.
So at 50, how did you know that you were channeling then? What other channelers had you come across who had influenced you to say, look, this is channeling?
I got a couple of readings from very good mediums, and that came about according to plan and schedule, although at the time I didn't know it. All of us have guardian angels and guides that are constantly prompting us and urging us to do different things. Most of this occurs without the human being aware of the process. It all seems to be coincidental, it's happenstance, it's haphazard. But much of it is not. Much of it is according to the life plan. Well, according to my life plan, I was urged both to write, which I have had the urge to do my entire life, and also to contact a number of guardian angel guys, take that back, a number of mediums, human mediums or psychics, to prime the pump, as it were, to jumpstart the process. All of them told me the same specific things. And then I understood that that information was coming to me from my guides, and they were giving me a little kick in the head, a little nudge, a little push. Get going. You're supposed to be writing about certain subjects. And I thought to myself, what subjects? And they said, here you go. And they just laid it all out for me, and it started coming. All according to my life plan, all according to a schedule I agreed to follow, but I was unaware of until they explained it to me. And they said, none of this is being forced on you. You wanted to do this. You planned all this. It's now come time. We've now turned the pages of the book. We've gotten to this part of it. We're at this chapter of the book. Let's do this. So I do it.
You sound very centered with it all. That I mean, is this now? Do you question it much?
No, not at all. I never questioned it.
Why not?
It just seemed perfectly natural, perfectly normal. I discovered it doesn't seem that way to other people. Over the years, particularly in business, I would often get an insight or a bit of information related to a topic, a subject, a challenge, something that was going on, and I would offer up that information. Say, for example, in a planning meeting. Well, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And when my turn would come, or I'd be asked a question, or when it was appropriate for me to offer my comment, I would offer that information. And as often as not, I would get very interesting looks back, particularly when I was younger, a bit of a snot nose. In my 20s, I would get looks back from people that were my age, the age I am now, who were very, what's the word I'm looking for? They were very put out, that someone with 2 or 3 decades less experience in the business than they had saw through to the solution or the crux of an issue that they hadn't quite figured out. Well, I discovered that this was a bit of an ego issue with these other people. It had nothing to do with me. But as I got older, I recognized what was going on. I would often wonder to myself afterwards, gee, how did I know that? I mean, I know it, and I know what I said, and I understand it, but how did I know it? Where and when did I pick up that bit of information? And then I realized there was no where or when that I had picked it up previously, that the thought occurred to me because it was being given to me at that moment, so I spoke it. This happens to everybody. The most common example I could give would be someone is going out the door, and they have to go someplace, and they have to do 3 things, or go to work, or go shopping, or whatever it is. And within 5 steps, suddenly it pops into their head very strongly that they have forgotten sunglasses or keys or something. They turn around and they go back. That happens to many people all the time. That is a perfect example of channeling. That is a person's guardian angel guides reminding them, you have forgotten X. Go back and get it.
So when you channel, let's just go to the basics here. You're working with some what you call guardian angels.
My guides. I
Your
have
guides.
3 principal guardian angel guides around me all the time. So I nickname them, is my nickname, not theirs, the committee. Because when they communicate with me, it comes across, the best example I could give in human communication would be singing. And it's very common to have 2 or 3 people sing the same thing at the same time. Speaking, not so much, but that's also possible. We humans just don't do it very often. Mostly it's singing. That's how the information comes to me. Although from time to time, I will pick up something that I can clearly identify from one of the 3 or 2 of the 3. But most of the time it comes from all 3. They're my guardian angel guides. Every human being has guardian angels and guides. And it's a moving concept. There's generally with most humans 1 principle, but there can be 2, who is with that person their entire life, from before birth until after they die. Then there are many others that come in and out according to purpose and need. And that in and out can be for a week, a month, a decade. It just depends on the particular person and what life arrangements have been made. So in that regard, I'm no different than anyone else. Most people discount this completely. And in fact, most people, if been told they have guardian angel guides around them, would just laugh it off, because the human perception, if I can't see it, if I can't smell it, if I can't touch it or feel it or taste it, it doesn't exist. Well, of course, that's not true. You can't taste lots of things, a lot of vitamins and foods. They're there. You can't see the moon when it sets. You can't see the sun at night. That doesn't mean they don't exist.
And if I was to say to you, are they with you now?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
In fact, a good bit of this information I'm giving you is being rechanneled to me as we speak. If you were to ask a question of them right now directly, they'd give me the answer to give to you.
And we'll do that as well. We'll definitely do that, because I think they want to come through. And which one comes through the most?
My main guardian angel, the name I've given, is Gabriana. But that's a human name. That's not quote unquote her name. That's the name and the gender I've assigned. That's my title.
Absolutely. And would you be surprised if this, as you develop this more, that this is, an aspect of yourself that's coming through, yet it feels very separate, yet it's a greater version. It's the bigger part of yourself. It's part of your soul that's coming through.
Well, it's always been a part of my soul. I wouldn't say that it's coming through. What I've said is I've learned how to use it better. Like the child prodigy that plays the piano like Mozart at age 10. They can choose not to play the piano or any musical instrument, or they can pursue it.
Yes, absolutely. It's that, to me, I always say it's like a funnel. And at the top of the funnel is that greater part of you, the part that's always been and always will be. And then it's kind of funneled in at the bottom of the base of the funnel into the human experience. So all that greatness is not lost, but it's to allow you to have this sort of, cut down version of your greatest part to experience this reality in that form.
Yes, that's a very good description. So say my guides.
Right. But then, I was interviewing a physicist just the other day, Dr. Tom Campbell, and he, to him, we are in a virtual reality. And this is all part of someone else's experience. And we're sort of their avatars, in a sense. And channeling falls into that. I don't know what your guys think of that.
Well, that's correct. When people use the term virtual reality, what they're saying is, okay, everything I touch and everything physical around me has physical existence because it's solid. I can't run through the wall. I can't put my hand through the table, etc., etc., etc. However, in our real home of heaven, it's the other way around. The illusion is what we think is solid. The more solid thing is the thing that we think is permeable. So this idea that someone's guardian angel or ghost can pass through a physical wall. We think of the wall as being more solid, and we think of the ghost as being more, I don't know what the word is, transparent, flighty, loose. It's the other way around. The essence of our soul is the true solid thing. The physical things around us are the illusion. Now, that doesn't mean they're an illusion. That doesn't mean that if you fall off a building and hit the ground and go splat, that the ground is an illusion. Of course not. Because everything within our reality is all agreed and coordinated to work together in a certain way. That's what we perceive, but we think that's reality. That's reality within the limits set around it. The reality is much larger than that. Dimensions, I guess you could call it. We live in a three-dimensional society where everything is physical. We're an environment. And the three dimensions, of course, width, height, and depth. And those represent the physical measurements of physical things that we touch. But there are all sorts of things in our environment that don't fit in with that. For example, electromagnetic signals, radio signals, light waves. Those are all measured in completely different terms. Well, it doesn't just stop there. Electromagnetic energy and electromagnetic waves and energy is much more broad and moves at speeds and velocities far beyond the limits of our three-dimensional environment. For example, we believe that in our environment, the fastest thing is the speed of light or electricity, 300,000 meters per second or 186,000 miles per second. No, that's not true. That's the speed we're able to perceive. But for example, it's the same thing if there are a mechanical device or whatever makes a certain sound, it will produce a spectrum of sound that humans can hear part of. Canines and other animals can hear much higher frequencies that we can't, coming from the same sound. Or they can hear lower frequencies. That's why, for example, if thunder rolls in the distance, many animals can pick up on that sound where a human cannot. And they know a storm is coming and they take cover. We don't know the storm is coming. We don't know that there has been any lightning. And we don't know that there's been any thunder because it's too far away. The animals can pick up on it. Well, there's an environment out and around and surrounds us and permeates us in the fourth and the fifth dimensions, which is far beyond the three dimensions in which we live, the dense physical environment that we call reality. It's really a subset. So in a sense, it's reality, but it's also a bit of an illusion. It can be very easily permeated. So our guardian angels and guides, for example, are energetic beings. They're not physical in our three-dimensional limitation. They can move through physical things almost as if they weren't there. And there are some humans that have that ability also, to a certain degree. We generally tend to call them magicians.
Very true, very true. So before we get into any direct conversation with, as you call them, the guardian angels or Gabriana, if I've got the name right there, let's just move forward just to the book that you've done as well, the Alien Handbook, and then I'm going to come full circle because. So you've got these three guys there, and I'm sure there's other books you're going to be doing with them. I'm sure there's books falling out of the sky in a sense with the amount of information that can come from them, but it's all with free will of asking the questions. They're not going to give any of the information unless the questions are asked, because that's
Correct.
just how this works. So what made you ask the question to write the Alien Handbook?
Two things, really. The first thing was one of those medium sessions I referred to, and one of the psychic mediums said, oh, and one of the things that's in the cards for you is to act as an intermediary with alien extraterrestrials and to translate and interpret on their behalf. So I quickly envisioned myself as walking around with a whole bunch of alien extraterrestrials, and I'm very smartly dressed in a suit and a necktie, and I'm walking around like a human diplomat, talking to other humans, introducing them. Of course, I don't think it's going to happen that way. Well, although it could, That will be a very interesting development. But what she was really referring to, which I discovered, is telepathic communication with alien extraterrestrials. So that was the first piece. The second piece were readers of my website. When you talked about the writing and the information that could come, that has already come. I've written enough channeling down, which is the rough equivalent of War and Peace, depending on the size of the page, about 1,500 pages. And I've self-published that in a number of volumes, and I'm now putting them into print on demand on Amazon, not just as ebooks, of all of the information I've channeled and posted to my website over the past 6 years on a huge variety of subjects, not just aliens.
And your website is?
The website is theamendment.net. 2 words all together, TheAmendment.net, theamendment.net.
Okay.
And I post channelings to that periodically, sometimes 2 or 3 a day, sometimes only once a week. And there is a very lively discussion of question and answers with me, my guardian angel guides, and readers on all sorts of subjects, follow-up questions, new subjects, and so forth.
Okay. Very, very interesting. Thank you for what you've just shared there as well. Okay, so your guys are connected now. So when this information for the book came through, that was when you were connecting to, as you would term them, extraterrestrial, or we use the word alien, it's just not the best word, but when you were connecting with this information to them, was it through your guys? Your guys were connected to them, they would bring them information through, or did you have direct connection to?
No, direct connection.
Direct connection.
The guides had almost nothing to do with it.
Right.
In fact, the one energetic being or soul that helped me enormously was Eric Metis, or the soul of Eric Metis, who is written about and is one of the key players in the website Channeling Eric, which is run by his mother. And he has been instrumental in running off and fetching energetic beings of all different types. He helped set up that connection with the aliens, but it was different because the aliens are physical like us. They just communicate telepathically. In fact, they're all telepaths.
And how did that connection with Eric happen for yourself?
That was part of the process I was describing earlier. I was led to his mother's website seemingly coincidentally, but shortly after I got there and started reading it, my guardian angel guy said to me in the background, "See, okay, here you are. This is where you're supposed to be. Keep reading." So I did, and I was hooked. I then discovered that I was part of the good doctor's soul family. And when I finally met her, I also met her granddaughter, who at the time was about 2 years old, who kept calling me Grandpa. And I thought, oh, that's strange, Grandpa? So one of the other guests there, a very accomplished medium, said, oh, that's because you were her grandfather in another life. And she's not old enough yet to have learned that out of her system. She still thinks you're her grandfather. That's why she's calling you Grandpa. I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? Okay. So that was the first time I had confirmation of running into a human being who I had also known as another human being when they were also another human being. And then I began to understand the connection.
Okay, so what happened then? So you're with the Medusas for a good part of a day. How then? What you then had a connection with Eric, and Eric helped you bring through the connection for this ET connection. Just explain that.
Just a little bit, but not very much. He is very, very good at bringing forth all sorts of energetic beings and the souls of the deceased. But the aliens, I simply contacted them myself. I didn't really need all that intermediation. And they came right through. It was a little bit slower. I had to call out, and I had to think very hard and concentrate, and then the information started flowing back. And what I discovered is that there are, and they told me this, the aliens themselves told me this, there are dozens of alien extraterrestrial civilizations visiting Earth on a regular basis, and there can be 1, 2, or 3 dozen different civilizations, representatives of them, in orbit or hovering around Earth at any time, sometimes more, sometimes less. And they also send scout ships into the atmosphere all the time. They theoretically could bring their larger vessel, their mothership, to use a human term, into the atmosphere, but they don't, because it's a little bit less easy to cloak, and they don't want to interfere, particularly now there's so much air traffic in the atmosphere. They don't want to come down closer to the surface and potentially interfere with our own air traffic, which regularly flies at 41 to 45,000 feet. That's the smaller private jets, and then of course military aircraft that go much higher. They don't want to come down to 80 or 70,000 feet with the big ship. They don't need to. They can see everything they need from an orbit of several hundred miles, and they cloak themselves completely. Rather than that, they just send the scout ships. The scout ships come in. Those are little small, short distance vessels, and they come into the atmosphere. And very often they decloak. They take off their robe, as it were, and show themselves intentionally, but they can cover up and hide completely also. The scout ships produce no sound, heat, or any type of signature. They're completely undetectable unless they decide to reveal themselves.
So what race was you working with when you was in connection then?
The first one I connected with, I remember I asked him his name, and he picked a name out of the Bible, and he called himself Zebulon, from Canopus. Another alien I channeled for the book was from a planet. Canopus is in our star cluster. We can see it from Earth. It's not that far away. Another one came from a planet he said they used to call Nemeda when they used spoken language. They don't anymore. But it's on the other side of the galaxy, roughly opposite from us. If I understand astronomy well, and I'm not much of an astronomer, so I could be incorrect on this, but I believe Earth and our solar system are about 2/3 the distance between the center of the Milky Way and the edge, the general edge of the galaxy. And the galaxy is about 100,000 light years across, as we would measure it. And so they're on the other side. So that would have a radius of 50,000. Earth is probably about 35,000 light years from the center. They would be 35,000 light years from the center in the other direction, or about 70,000 light years away from us, give or take, opposite. And they said their planet was Nemeda. They don't have a name for their sun, just like we don't have a name for our sun. We just call it the sun. I guess the Greeks used to have a name. What did they call the sun? Helios? I don't know if that was a name or just another word for sun. But we really don't have a name for the sun. Like you have a name Kevin, I have a name Patrick.
Sure. But if we actually physically went to the coordinates, which we can't do, but if we could do at some point in the very distant future, we
could go there. They could take us there.
But would we actually see them there, or are they in our own parallel universe, or are they in some other dimension?
No, it's not a parallel universe. They're in our universe. They exist alongside us, just like the trees outside the building you're in. They're as real as we are. They exist in our time, in our universe. They're not a separate being or a separate existence. They just cover themselves up so we can't see them.
That's what I was going to say. You know, if I was some lucky astronaut going to the International Space Station, and I trained all my life for that, or the good part of it, I may never ever have that experience of ever seeing anything out of the ordinary. Yeah, anything. But as you say, if they're able to cloak...
Correct, that has happened.
Yeah. Most don't, do they? I mean, let's face it, most astronauts do not see anything up there, do they? Except for a few that have come back to report that.
That's correct, because the aliens specifically cloak themselves. And here's the issue. Seeing astronauts, put it this way. If you wanted to speak to the manager of a store for whatever your reasons, you're a material supplier, you're a vendor, you're a customer, you have something to discuss with them. There could be any number of reasons. A large box store, and you want to speak to the manager. What would be the best way to do it? Would you hang around outside hoping for the manager to come out one of the doors at some point when you happen to be there? Probably not. You'd go in and you'd find where they are and approach them. That's exactly what the aliens have done. They've come to Earth. They haven't hung out in outer space or hung out in orbit or hung out on the other side of the moon waiting for humans, generally Americans or Russians, to send up a rocket with a capsule in it. They've watched that and they're very intrigued by it. In fact, they're thrilled. They enjoy that enormously. But that for them is not a point of contact. They have no interest in that. In fact, it's practically useless. It doesn't. Number one, it doesn't serve their purpose. It would be like you waiting for the cashier to get off of her shift to clock out and come outside for you to talk to her. Why would you want to talk to her when you can go talk to the boss inside?
Yeah.
Better to go talk to the boss. So they watch. They're very fascinated by our space travel, but that's not their focus of communication. They have met with representatives of Earth governments regularly for all of the existence of humanity. Aliens created us. We're not evolved from species on Earth. They created us 100,000 years ago. I explain this in the book, the Alien Handbook, in a bit of detail. They're observing the product of their creation or of the creation of other aliens. They all come and they all watch. Earth is like a tremendous lab and an experiment, plus it's a very cool place to visit. Anyway, contact with humans, they have met with representatives of all the governments, and all of this is covered up. They are, as a group, generally frustrated with the concealment. Now, back up a little bit. Why is this occurring, and why are we hearing more about aliens? Why is somebody like me writing a book like this? They are extremely respectful of Earth society and organization because there has been in place in and around Earth a prime directive. The prime directive essentially says no interference, no involvement beyond anything human choice produces or natural forces cause. Earthquakes, tidal waves, whatever. Whatever occurs on Earth has to be the result of the natural forces of the planet, of the solar system and the universe, or human choices. We cannot become involved and distort that. They could come into, and they have throughout history, they can come into Earth's atmosphere, reveal themselves, interact with us, and show us certain things without changing the course of history, particularly when the human population on Earth was much smaller and more advanced in understanding as it was in prior developed Earth civilizations. I'm referring specifically to Lemuria, which was in the Pacific, and that lasted up until approximately 70,000 years ago. And then the second rise of an advanced, technologically superior civilization, Atlantis, which lasted until approximately 20,000 years ago. Our recorded history that we're aware of is about 6,000 years old. But there was a lot going on in that 14,000 years between 20 and 6. But that's pretty much our recorded history is about 6. That entire time, aliens have been coming, and they have interacted with humans, and they've left their mark all over the place. The Great Pyramids in Egypt, Stonehenge in England, and on and on and on. The stone foundations of a lot of the Inca civilization in Peru. Those are examples. There are many others. All of those had either a hand of alien extraterrestrials assisting, or they were outright built by the aliens. And the humans understood this. But these things were done to help humanity and help civilization, and the aliens, did not interfere or distort or divert anything. But with a smaller human population, that was a viable approach. Now there's a great concern, because if they suddenly all show up, what will the effect be?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's it, exactly, isn't it? What will the effect? But we are just, I mean, we're just not ready for that. I'm not ready for that, I don't think. You know, I want my free...
Of course you are. Of course you are. If you met certain aliens, you'd have no problem with them.
Well, yeah, but does that take away my free will? That's the thing.
No, there's no free will there. No, they'll never interfere with your free will.
Well, in the sense of, am I happy with an experience without them? What is the benefit of them showing themselves in my human experience?
Well, you make a very good point that they have brought up. And here's the benefit that they wish to offer. They know what's going on Earth. The reason they're paying so much attention to Earth is because we, the humans, accidentally figured out how to play with matches and how to set fire to the house. I'm talking about nuclear energy. We were not supposed to develop it this soon along the development of this society. Because what's the first thing we did as soon as we figured out how to rupture an atom? We built a bomb and slaughtered, what, 500,000 people? And probably 1 million by the time all of the radioactive fallout finished doing its thing. So somebody discovers gunpowder. What's the first thing you do? Build a bomb and kill people? And it wasn't as if nuclear energy was discovered and then misused by the very discoverers who injured themselves. That would be understood, like somebody discovering gunpowder and accidentally blowing themselves up or starting a fire or whatever. And then we would learn from that mistake. No. The people that discovered it knew it was very, very hazardous, very dangerous. We specifically went out of our way to build a bomb and to slaughter other humans. From the human point of view, it can be justified that the bombs were used because Imperial Japan was not going to give up any more than the Nazis were going to give up in Germany. They simply were not going to give up. And they were told repeatedly, if you don't, there's going to be a ground invasion, and how many Japanese are going to die in that? How many Americans are going to die? Do you want that? And the Japanese refused it. None of this was all kept very confidential while it was happening in the years after the end of the Second World War. But the Japanese were also told something else can happen, and it's devastating and it's very bad. And you would prefer to avoid it, and we would prefer to avoid it. Give up now. Well, it took 2 of them before they got the message. The aliens watched all this in horror, as did all of our guardian angels and guides, who are the real masters of the process. Alien extraterrestrials are they're telepaths. That's how they communicate, the ones that we deal with. And they are very much aware of the physicality of the universe, our galaxy, and also of the energetic beings that are everywhere, which we are also in our essence. We're just on a trip in a body as an incarnation. They are very aware of this. They communicate with their own guardian angels and also all of ours, and together coordinate their activities. But we are to be prevented from setting off any more nuclear warheads in anger with intent to injure or kill. But this is not being done to protect humanity because we're too stupid to protect ourselves. This is being done because if we were to do it, the effect would be devastating on the energetic beings throughout the galaxy. They're doing it to protect themselves, not because they necessarily love us or they wish to interfere or distort what goes on. They're doing it because we, the humans, do not understand the effects of setting off a nuclear explosion, the effects of nuclear fission or fusion. We only understand a certain physical aspect of it. We don't know everything that goes on and what the energy release does. So that's one reason they pay a lot of attention to Earth. We the humans, started working on some of the basic principles of nuclear physics in the late 19th century, and this is all well known and documented. What is kept concealed completely is how we found the final clues. And the way we found them was this. Radar was being developed in the 1930s and was used to great effect in the 1940s by a number of countries, Great Britain, Germany, United States, etc. And I forget the radar, what it stands for. It's an acronym, radio amplitude detection something or other, and it's abbreviated radar. And as we got good at broadcasting radio signals in the 1910s, 20s, 30s, and radio sets were created, et cetera, it occurred to somebody, hey, wait a minute, we can also build a receiver and pick up the reflection of a radio electromagnetic signal back and use that to detect things, the Doppler effect, et cetera. So research into radar began, but it was very crude and overpowered. Well, there was an alien extraterrestrial scout ship flying through the atmosphere, and it was visually picked up by one of these experimental radar units in Nevada in the United States. So they turned on a very powerful burst. As anybody knows, radar is directional versus a regular radio signal that goes out 360 degrees. And anybody that's looked at, for example, a radar screen, you can see the line moving around in a circle that shows the direction of the signal going out and coming back. Well, this was turned on very abruptly before the alien scout ship had the opportunity to avoid it, so they flew through the radar signal. No problem. It disturbed their navigational system somewhat, but that's no problem. They would just simply reboot it and reset it. However, they were so close to the ground they couldn't recover and they crashed. And they were killed. Well, we knew all this, ran over and found the ship. Well, we also found a whole bunch of technology inside the ship. And we found their nuclear reactor and the way they use nuclear power to generate electricity in a way that we can't. We still don't know how to do it the way they did it, but we discovered certain clues. The best analogy I could give would be if a gasoline-powered turboprop with two engines went down in, say, I don't know, the Brazilian jungle, and the natives there that barely know anything of the outside world found it, could they at some point figure out how to start the engine? They probably could. Now, would they know how to fly it? No. Would they understand how to maneuver it? No. And they certainly couldn't even dream of building one or designing one, but they could probably make the engine go with enough tinkering around. That's what we did. We found out how to start up this device, but we never in a million years could build one, design one, or operate one properly. We could figure out how to start it and figure out more or less what it did, just like the natives in the Brazilian jungle could figure out that this was an engine and it had fuel, and its purpose was to turn this thing called a propeller. Whatever names they would give it would be fine. That's how we found out how to start a nuclear explosion. And this was all kept and has continued to be kept completely confidential. None of this has been revealed, that this is how we came across the final clues. Well, ever since then, the alien extraterrestrials have been paying really close attention to Earth, much closer than they did before, precisely because they know that we have the matches. And they're watching very closely what we do with it. Above them, on top of them, are the guardian angels and guides of all of the billions of humans on Earth. So there are that many more billions of them who have and will intervene to diffuse, deactivate, and prevent us from ever detonating a nuclear warhead.
And again, this was all channeled material, information?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what do we do? What have we done with that technology that came from Roswell? Have we put it? Is that kind of gone back into some technology that we have now? I mean, from what you're saying,
yes, we have all sorts of technologies: petrochemicals, plastics, the development of Kevlar,
night vision,
carbon fiber, etc. All of the hints at how to develop these things have come from things we glean from alien extraterrestrial vessels.
But we've only just touched the surface of what was on that craft, because even at today's standard, we still don't understand it, in a sense.
Correct. We don't understand how they're able to maneuver the craft. For example, just the other day, in fact, it was on the news last night, my wife and I saw it, was a black and white film release that it's reported to have been taken by a U.S. Navy F-18 fighter, and it's a visual camera of they call it a UFO. They don't know what it is, and they show it moving at very high speed. In other words, the F-18 itself, Mach 2, and its camera is on. It's filming this device that is overtaking the F-18 from below, and at Mach 2 is able to make 90-degree turns right and left, and then straighten out and catch up and then fly away. There is no aircraft or technology that humans possess that can make a 90-degree turn at Mach 2. at twice the speed of sound, and then make another turn and recover and catch back up. It was following the F-18 and intentionally revealing itself so that it would be filmed. Well, one of the technologies the aliens have is an anti-gravity device and the ability to create a counter-gravity field. We could never develop aircraft that could move in the way the alien scout ships move, because the G-forces or the gravity forces would kill anyone aboard if they made such a maneuver. Well, same thing with the aliens. No problem. They have a counter-gravity device. They can make it completely weightless and counteract the effects of gravity 100%. So that they can sit in this vessel and sip a cup of tea, as it were. I don't know if they actually drink tea, but they could sit down and sip a cup of tea while the ship was making moves like this, no effect. Completely eliminate centrifugal force. And they have other technologies that allow them. I explain a good deal of this in the book. And this information is all channeled to me by my guides, and some of it by the aliens.
How many different species or races or foreign races are coming to planet Earth and sort of, observing us?
Oh, we have been observed by hundreds of them. At any given time, 1 to 3 dozen roughly. There are 3 principal ones, and they are from our, I guess you could call it star cluster. And when I say star cluster, what my guides tell me is roughly out to about 150, 200 light years, 150 to 200 light years, which seems very far to us because that's the distance light moves in 200 years. So we think of trillions and trillions and trillions of miles, a distance that's incomprehensible, because if it's 200 light years away, it would take 400 years to go round trip, and we could never do that. So for a human being, we consider that as something that does not exist, because we could never go there and return. You could never even get there. It would be a suicide mission, and you'd never reach your goal. Well, that's not true at all. Aliens can get here in a couple of hours. Some of them as little as 1 hour, depending on where they're coming from and what their technology is. But in our star cluster, there are 3 principal civilizations who have taken the lead in implementing and then enforcing the Prime Directive. They are from Sirius, which is very close. That's only about 8 or 9 light years away. Arcturus, which is the second brightest star. Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky. Arcturus is the second brightest star in the night sky. It's a red giant. It's about, I think, 80 light years away. And then the Pleiades cluster, which, if I'm not mistaken, is about 60. Somebody listening to this who's an astronomer can correct me. And the Pleiades cluster, of course, is called Subaru in Japanese, same constellation. And it is the logo on the hood of their car. And it depicts the stars. Anyway, the Pleiadians, the Sirians, and the Arcturians are the 3 principal races. And these are our names for them, because these are our names for their stars and their star systems. They are the ones that essentially enforce the Prime Directive, and they're around Earth all the time. They are very advanced, particularly the Syrians, on a galactic level. They will not allow any other alien extraterrestrial race to come visit Earth and do anything other than observe, to absolutely prevent any distortion or interference, hence the Prime Directive. And they have the technological ability and the firepower, so to speak, to prevent anyone from interfering. But when I use that word firepower, that right away conjures up the human image of military might, and that's not what operates at all. Most of the abilities of the alien extraterrestrial civilizations are mental. They have physical capabilities, and they're beyond anything we could imagine. That's why I find it so funny. For decades now, we've been making movies about aliens, and in virtually every one, they're all evil and they're invading Earth and they're killing everybody. And it's hilarious. It's laughable, because with the technologies that the aliens have, the extraterrestrials have, if they really wanted to do harm, Earth would be vaporized in 10 minutes. They would never do that. Never. We're not all that special. There are lots of races around. We're just one of many. It's because we're at a very crucial stage in the development of our society And they all remember their own civilizations passing through similar stages and phases of development. So they're very, 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 very to know how we're doing it and what decisions we're going to make and how we're going to handle all this. And they don't want us to destroy the planet and our civilization. First, they love Earth and they like to come here, and they come here all the time. There are 6 billion people on Earth. We think that the planet Earth is very populated, but actually most of it's very empty. Look at, for example, the country of India, which is, I don't know what the population of India is, but I've heard 1 billion people. And it has the land area, which is roughly 1/3 the United States or 1/3 Australia. The United States has 330 million now. Australia, I think, is barely knocking on 40 million. In other words, Australia is empty. North America is empty. Most of Northern Asia, Eastern Europe is empty. That's called Russia. It's empty. There's almost no people there. There's lots of cool things there. Aliens come and they look. They love to enjoy it. Earth is a very unique place. So that's part of it. But observance of our society and our development is of extreme interest to them. Plus, they have been watching over us because they had a hand, and I explain this in the book, they, the Canopians, the Syrians, and the Pleiadians, had a hand in the DNA upgrade after we were first created by the faraway civilization, who originally came to Earth and created the first humanoids through DNA manipulation. They had a hand in it, so they see themselves almost as our caretakers.
And it almost makes you think, well, who created them? Were they that created us on a much more natural course of evolution? So it took them a hell of a lot longer to get to where they got to than the kind of speed that we were evolved at.
That's correct. And that's why they're so interested in watching us. Many of the alien extraterrestrial civilizations were also created by seeding in the same way we were. And you're correct. A lot of them took a lot longer, relatively speaking, than we have. But we had the benefit of being created with all the modern DNA upgrades. All we had to do was learn the social aspect of it. We did not come from chimpanzees and orangutans and gorillas and so on up to what we are now.
To seed a society, to seed a planet, then obviously that thinking must come from a very spiritual thinking that you're creating vessels for consciousness to come and have an experience in.
Yes.
So these are very highly advanced spiritual beings that
Extremely advanced. They value human life more than we do. Well, just look around at the murder rate.
Yes.
In virtually any country of the world. We have this debate constantly in the United States, and to me it's almost sickening. And the reason I say almost sickening, well, it is in many ways. North America's 3 large countries. Mexico, 120 million, United States, 330 million. Canada's much smaller. I think Canada's 30 or 40 million, similar to Australia. Large land area. The Canadian homicide rate is low. It's about, I think, 17 or 18 people per million residents. The United States is about 40 or 45, but the breakdown of the 40 or 45 murdered in the United States per every million people has an interesting component, and it's not very politically correct. No one wants to talk about it. Mexico, the homicide rate is, I think, 220 or 230. Well over 4 times as high as the United States, nearly 5 times as high. You can be sent to jail for a month just for having an empty pistol shell, a piece of brass that's been fired. It's about as harmless as a paper clip. You can go to prison for a month for that. No one's allowed to have guns in Mexico. Guns are used all the time, and everybody's being slaughtered. So we have this debate about firearms and murder in the United States. The aliens see this, and the extraterrestrials see this, and they shake their heads. Look at how we mistreat one another, and it's which tool is chosen is almost beside the point. Look in Europe. Look at the mass killings that occur in Europe regularly, but they don't always involve firearms. They involve knives or vehicles or bombs. dead is dead is dead. It doesn't really make a difference. And it's colored under a different light. It's not a psycho teenager that's taking revenge against all the people that bullied him in school. It's a psycho Islamo terrorist that decides that French people need to die in a restaurant. Well, whatever the motivation is, the effect is the same.
Yes.
So we have this debate constantly about human violence. Aliens would never do this. They never kill one another. They never kill other people. It doesn't even occur to them to do this. Now, most of us on Earth, 99+% of us on Earth, think the same way. They watch all of this. They watch us create murder, create homicide, create violence, and then fret over it. This is a fascinating thing for them to do.
Yeah.
Because they have passed through all these stages in their own civilizations eons ago and are very interested to see how we solve it, particularly because we're doing it so much more quickly.
What was their solution to where we are now?
Stop teaching it. No human baby, and they've told me this, and I've asked this many times, no human baby is born with an inherent, innate desire to kill others. It is all learned behavior. A lot of the bad social behavior, wife beating, stealing, on and on and on, this is all learned. And we learn many things very young in life, chief among them language, and we have no memory of it. Virtually nobody that can speak normally by the age of 5, and most people learn to, even by the age of 8, fairly advanced vocabulary. They can now read books and go to school, etc., and speak with almost anyone on any subject they understand. By age of 8, nobody has any memory, and for the rest of their life, they have no memory of learning their native tongue. It all occurs generally before the age of 3, and everyone forgets it. But obviously, everyone learned it. Well, let's look at that. Is that the only thing we learn between birth and age of 3? Of course not. We learn all sorts of things. Language is one of the things we learn, and it becomes a conduit through which we learn so many other things. Well, some people learn how to kill others. And the seeds we plant in members of our society at a very young age. And then act out. An example of a country that has done a very good job with not being violent anymore is England, or Great Britain, I should say. But look at just the history of England. What was England 1,000 years ago? What was England 500 years ago? And then what was England in the 20th century? And it's an admirable track record of eliminating the tendency to be violent for the sake of violence by not teaching each other. Well, then someone could argue, yeah, but look at the British Empire and the use of British force overseas, and that becomes a very interesting subject.
Yeah, I mean, we raped, pillaged, and everything. The English did when you look at the history of it. So yeah.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I remember my wife and I years ago going to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, and we're looking at all the artifacts in there, and they're amazing. Columns from Egypt, and you name it, it's in there. And my wife says, well, this is pretty impressive stuff. And I said, well, it just goes to show you how efficient the British Army was. And she says, really? And I said, well, do you think that all these things got into England because they were gladly donated by all the countries that gave them up? I said, they weren't donated. There's a whole bunch of quote unquote redcoats, the old colonial name in the United States for British troops. There were a whole bunch of very efficient redcoats that look, basically in the 19th century, there wasn't a military force on the earth that could oppose the British Army. They were very good, and they were so good, no one even tried to oppose them. They showed up, and they decided they were going to do something, and they just did it, and everyone stood out of their way. Because to get in their way was suicide. Now, of course, that's changed, but anyway, back to your question on the violence thing. This is what my guides and the aliens have told me. We have troubles on Earth that we create. They're self-generated. We will generally complain about our government is concealing X, Y, and Z from us. Why? Well, get rid of the government. You created it, get rid of it. That's their answer. And they're absolutely correct. We create the organizations of our society. We create the roles and then we fill them on our own. The book goes into this in a bit of detail.
Yes, no,
Very, very detailed interviews with the aliens.
absolutely. I mean, it's a very, I've again not had a chance to read the book, so it sounds like a bloody amazing read, and yeah. So I actually would really recommend this book from the way that you're coming across as well. So, coming back to that question I said, or that example I said, where do I really want contact? I guess I'm saying that from the perspective of most people on this planet. They're just, me personally, am I ever going to see contact in my lifetime? I just can't see it.
Well, you might not see it personally, no.
I've seen a UFO. I've had a UFO experience as a younger person that was absolutely incredible, and my family still can't talk about it too much. I've had that experience. This is what got us into these subjects, right? But on a larger scale, I just can't see it ever happening. Not yet.
Well, I have asked the aliens about this, and a lot of the contact with aliens revolves around, first of all, vibrations. It can be physically discomforting for many humans to be too physically close to some aliens, or it depends on the number. So you can see an alien from a certain distance, but as you get closer and closer to them, you would be very, very uncomfortable around them, or they would be uncomfortable around you, because each one of us has a resonant frequency at which our soul vibrates. Most people are unaware of it, but it's very simple. All you have to do is go into a quiet room and listen to yourself, and everyone will hear it. It's a very high-pitched hum or hissing sound in the back of your ears, and it generally doesn't exist and fades into the background. But everyone can hear that in a quiet room. Well, what they're hearing is the vibration of their own soul. It's the same as standing next to a large transformer in a substation. You can hear it vibrating. In Europe, I think the electricity is, most of Europe is 50 hertz, 50 cycles per second. In the US, it's 60. But you can't really hear the difference. The human ear can't really pick up the difference between 50 or 60. You just hear this buzz, this buzzing sound when you stand next to a transformer. That's an example of it. So you can hear the vibrations of your soul. This is not your mind, it's not your body. It's your ethereal essence vibrating. Everyone vibrates at a certain level. So do the aliens. Their vibrations are generally higher and incongruent with that of a human. So a lot of them would be prevented from being too close to us in physical proximity.
Until we raise our vibration.
Others can come right next to us. It depends on which ones.
So basically what you're saying, until the vibration of mankind is raised to a certain level, as in we're coming from more oneness and love.
No. Much more basic than that. No. Our vibration could go up and down. Our physical characteristics are X. Theirs are Y. They don't mesh very well. Just like you would have a hard time hugging an alligator. Assuming it's a dead alligator that lets you hug it, because an alligator wouldn't let you hug it, but you would have a very hard time doing that because the skin of an alligator is extremely rough and abrasive, and it would be painful. So you wouldn't do it. The aliens can't come too close to us, some of the civilizations. Other civilizations can. Other aliens also can't come into our atmosphere for very long because the mixture of gases make it very difficult for them to breathe for any extent. So they would have a breathing device just like we would use, but that would scare us off.
So let me ask a question, right? So what would be the conditions then for full contact to ever be made?
It's already been made. Full contact has occurred already many times.
No.
It's all been covered up.
No, I mean with everyone being aware. With everyone being aware.
Very simple. We, the people, all the people of Earth have to get together, or at least a majority of us, and ask for it. And that requires that we believe that it can happen. That requires us to believe that alien extraterrestrials exist. We have to believe they exist. They're there. They visit us. They're our cousins. Some of them had a hand in creating us. Others watch over us. They're there. We're part of the galactic community. We just don't know it yet, but we're a part of the galactic. Now, some of us know. There are some military leaders that know all this very well and don't speak about it literally under threat of death from other humans. Literally know that they will be murdered if they speak about it openly. For example, this was one of the factors that went into the assassination of John F. Kennedy, because he wanted to speak about alien encounters. And there were other things also, not just that. And the powers that be that run things decided to get rid of him. So they did. I mean, this hoax about Lee Harvey Oswald is the biggest crock of bullshit I've ever heard in my life. A trained U.S. Marine firing a bolt-action Italian rifle that he bought in the mail at a target that's moving away from him. It would be like, that's about as logical as you saying you want to take up watchmaking, so you're going to buy a pair of trainers and you're going to strap them onto your hands, and that's going to help you manipulate the watch tools. Really? It's ridiculous, the story that we've been told about Lee Harvey Oswald, and most of the American public knows it. We've already had the full contact. It has occurred repeatedly on a regular basis over the past several decades, in the 1940s and 1950s and since, with leaders of our societies. The problem that the general public isn't aware of yet, what we don't understand, is that we create human hierarchies. The aliens observe us. They watch us have a political campaign. They watch us have an election. They watch the British Parliament. They watch the effort that goes into choosing a prime minister. They watch what the prime minister does. They watch what all the people do when the prime minister says, jump 3 feet high, and everyone says, okay. And then somebody from the opposition party says, no, I demand you jump 4 feet high. And then somebody else says, why jump at all? And they watch the whole process and what humans do. So they understand that we invest great effort and energy and respect in the leaders that we choose to fill the roles that we collectively create. Who are they? Who are they, the aliens, to come in and turn the whole thing around and take sides with one group of humans against the others? They'll never do that. They don't see the President of the United States as any different from you. You, Kevin Moore, and the President of the United States are just two different human beings. Now, what you think of the President of the United States and what he might think of you, that's between us. That's a human thing. They are never going to come in and divide and conquer and take sides, and never, ever, ever. We have leadership, so they contact our leadership.
There's been a lot of people come forward as whistleblowers. Do you feel, and does your connection say, that there's a lot of misinformation with some of these whistleblowers?
Some, but most of it is, if not precise, reasonably accurate to very accurate.
What about those who say their time regressed and they're going back in time and that kind of thing? Is that feasible?
Not for humans in a physical body, no. But yes, but the whole subject of time travel and the perception of time is separate from anything involving aliens.
So there are no species of entities or whatever you want to call it out there that are coming to see us that are from other timelines?
Oh, no, there are. That is quite possible for some other physical beings. Yes, it's just not possible for humans.
What about a species called the Blue Avians? Has that come through at all?
Yes, but these are all human names. There are many species. These are all names that we give them. We can change that name tomorrow if we'd like. For example, right. I've heard the term Anunnaki. That's a human name given to the alien extraterrestrial civilization that created humans in the first place. We can give that any name we want.
Absolutely. So when we start talking of bases in Antarctica,
there are no alien bases in Antarctica. There are no alien bases on Earth.
Right. Okay.
There will be, but they would more correctly be called a diplomatic mission. They're not going to be military type base.
So people who would say the opposite to you say, no, you're wrong, there are. I know the truth, and that's it.
Okay, show it. Okay, show it to us.
Yeah.
Show us that alien base in Antarctica.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
that's not to say there are no remnants of constructions and visits that alien extraterrestrials have made there. Of course they have.
I,
But
sup-
it is not an operating base the way we would think of one.
I suppose people could say the same to you, as in prove it. This is channel material, prove it.
Well, okay, I would simply say to them, I'll prove it to you all day long. List for me what proof you will accept.
Right.
Start off
Absolutely.
right there, and then I'll start giving it to you.
Absolutely. Okay. And it's very much like, the shows that we see, like Star Trek and shows like that. It's lots of people have talked about on my show as well that material was channeled.
A lot of it, yes.
Right.
Star Trek, a great disturbance in the force. Well, that's the life force that exists between all things.
What would our planet look like in a sense of if we had full contact here because mankind wanted that? What would our way of living be more of, do you think? Do you think we would be coming from, do you think if we had full contact and we wanted that as a mass human experience, that our way of life would be very different then afterwards?
Oh, yeah, it would improve. Because this is another thing I've worked on. For example, the aliens have explained to me and some others a method which was already used on Earth, how to generate electricity with no fuel, no emissions, more reliably than we do now. They would show us that. So the way we generate and distribute electricity would be changed fundamentally. And everyone except someone that has a lot of money invested in energy infrastructure, electricity infrastructure, would benefit.
Yeah, right.
We would no longer use nuclear energy or coal or natural gas or anything else. Maybe a little water. That's not bad.
No,
We generate a lot of electricity in certain countries with water. That's a good thing. But most of the electricity generated around the world would no longer be. Now, that wouldn't make a whole lot of friends. Just in Great Britain, the coal miners would not be the happiest people in the world. If electricity were suddenly generated across the country using this method rather than the current ones. That's one example, but there are many others. The aliens would show us a number of techniques and methods we can use in our own way to improve many things if we're willing to listen and then learn and adapt those suggestions to our way of life.
Are we all able to connect to the connection that you've got?
Yes, we all do it all the time. Everyone has the ability to channel to a greater or lesser degree. It's natural to everybody.
Yes.
But we train it out of ourselves.
Yes, we do.
And there are differences in talent and ability. Like anything, some people can run very fast, some people don't run well at all, some people can't. Some people speak well, some people can barely manage their native tongue, and on and on and on. Anything you can, there are variations. Same thing with channeling. But the ability to do so exists for every human being.
Well, let me just thank you so much, first of all, for everything that you've allowed us to go into. I know we've kind of scratched the surface with your work. We've been putting your book on the screen throughout this interview and obviously your website as well. Let's just turn this over just to Gabriana as well, that's probably connected with you throughout this interview. One thing I'd like to know as well, in a sense, is do we create our reality?
Yes.
And as we shift our understanding that we are creating our reality, or as we change our reality, put it that way, and create a new one, is that almost like entering into another dimensional universe?
No, it's modifying the one you're in.
Modifying.
There's no need to move into another dimension. You can change the one you have.
Yes.
Why throw away a perfectly good automobile? This is her speaking. Why throw away a perfectly good automobile because you don't like the color? You can simply change the color of the one you have. Oh, okay, it wears out. Well, then rebuild it. These sound like obstacles to humans because they require a certain amount of effort, materials, skill, labor, and so forth. But in your mind, with the power of thought, you can accomplish all these things easily. The only difference is there's a time delay. They don't coalesce immediately. The changes take a certain amount of time, the illusion on Earth, to occur. But you can do all these things.
But
There's no need to shift dimensions. You can do it in the dimension you have.
But can we shift our dimension to another?
If we want to, of course.
And do some of us humans do that?
Yes. Not many, but some do.
Okay. So when we talk about the Mandela Effect, is that a true effect that happens sometimes?
Well, you could call that more accurately, this is Gabriana speaking, that's a parallel reality.
Parallel reality. Now, what's the difference between what I've just been speaking about and parallel reality then?
Well, the dimension depends on how you define dimension. Is it physical? Is it location? Or is it energetic?
Gabriana, yeah, I've been using the wrong terminology. Sorry, I meant parallel.
Well, no, it's not wrong. It just depends on how you understand it. That's what she says.
Right, yes.
What you're describing is, in human words, she says, is more accurately portrayed as a parallel reality or a parallel course of events.
Parallel, yes. Now, okay then, let me re-ask those questions. Are we shifting parallel realities in our human experience?
All the time.
Right. Oh God. Right. Okay. Good. Yeah. You know what? There's an example to the audience of asking the right bloody question. Right. Yeah.
Oh, you can have as much detail as you'd like, but you're getting brief answers because you said let's go a little more briefly.
No, I don't mean that. I mean there's an example to the audience of the difference in terminology. When I use the word dimensional reality and parallel reality, then yes, you are shifting parallel realities all the time, compared to when I ask the same question on dimensional, and no, you're not. Why would you? So you have to get your questions right here.
Yes.
How many times in a year, a day? No. Actually, how many times in just a day then, Gabriana, is Patrick shifting himself into different parallel realities?
It depends on the number of realities you want to include. Are they grouped or are they broken out individually? Approximately 1 billion on the high end to about 12 on the low end. It depends on your grouping.
Depends on the group. So as Patrick shifts into different parallel realities, then is he also then connecting with a different Gabriana in a different parallel reality?
A different version of me, yes.
So Patrick is never really, or not always, connecting to the same Gabriana. It's a different parallel version in some, using human words here.
Yes. However, the difference is Patrick is Patrick is Patrick. There's a thread. All of the different realities and different circumstances don't change the fact that these are different versions of the same Patrick along the same thread or rope or line or chain. Same with me.
But as he shifts...
So when you say a different parallel reality, you're referring to a different link in the chain, but it's still the same chain.
It's still the same chain, but then maybe there's something extra on that chain, like an extra link, like some extra information that wasn't there in the other parallel version?
Or just the location. Let's say you've got a chain holding a ship's anchor. Is it a link in the chain that's on the deck? Is it a link of the chain between the hull and the water, or is it a link on the chain deep under the surface? Those are all links of the different chain, all very different circumstances, different realities.
Is it a different variation of the vibration of Gabriana? You know, if I ask you now one truth, and then I change my truth on something, and then speak to Gabriana in a year's time, she gives me a different answer to that question. Is that because I'm not speaking to the same Gabriana that I was speaking to right now? And
no, the answer changes because the circumstances change. Truth never varies.
Okay.
The real issue is, what do you mean by truth?
Your truth, Gabriana. Does your truth ever change as we shift into different parallel realities?
No, neither does yours. You are who you always are. The circumstances that surround you make you think otherwise. Those are her words exactly.
Okay. And I guess I asked those questions because maybe that will just help some people to look at this differently as well, just what we've spoken about all this time as well, that maybe on one parallel reality, you know, I'm ready for disclosure, and then on another version of myself, if I'm going to tune into that side, maybe I don't want it. Maybe.
You'll decide as you grab the knob. These are her words. This is Patrick speaking now. I'm giving you the words to you exactly as I'm getting them, which is pretty unusual. I don't usually get words. Usually I get a clump of information that goes a lot faster, and then I have to kind of choose the words as I go. But to your questions, when I slow down and I go deliberately, that's coming from her word by word by word, exactly as I'm giving it to you.
Okay, okay. Well, I'm going to leave it there because I think I'm going to interact with you, Gabriana, in person, in Texas, maybe. So I might be coming to you and include you on the docu-series that we're doing for channeling as well, because I think
she says that you can interact with any spiritual being anywhere, anytime you want.
Yeah.
If you come to Texas, the interaction will be face-to-face with Patrick. You don't have to come to Texas to see me.
No, I know that. I'm just an in-person interview is a very different type of interview to what we've just done right now. Trust me.
Yes, that's true.
Totally
that's very true.
Different type of interview, and it's much more personal as well. So, okay. Well, does Gabriana have any final message that she'd like to give the audience?
Enjoy the book. Doubt everything you read. Question everything that's in there, and think about it. Tell other people to do the same, and soon enough, all of your cousins will come visit.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Gabriana. Thank you, Patrick. And it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure for me also. Thank you.